Hazur, his question is as follows. He said that we know that the Khalifa in Jamaat Ahmadiyyah got the highest authority, and Islam also does not segregate the, he said, ad-deen wa dawla, I mean the leadership from religion. Maybe he means by leadership politics here. And then he said if in certain times there will be an Ahmadi president of a state, obviously he has to obey Hazur's authority, and then he is inquiring, will Hazur think that one day he will have some political approach to certain issues?
I fully agree with the first proposition, that in Islam, as far as the religious authority is concerned, Khalifatul Masih holds the highest religious authority. But I do not agree with the proposition that in Islam politics and religion are inseparable and they're one and the same thing. Again, I disagree with the proposition that Islam in the early days was a symbol also of political might. And both the religion supremacy, the religious knowledge, or the final authority in religion and the final authority in politics were combined by any Khalifa ever in the history of Islam. This is fundamental and it should be clearly understood, because when Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam began his ministry as Khatamun Nabiyyin, potentially he was Khatamun Nabiyyin at the very time when he announced that he was the Prophet of God. He held no political authority, but he held all the religious authority with him. Was he half a prophet then, without political authority? He was full prophet, and he was also the prophet of all the world, right from the beginning. Ya ayyuhan nasu inni rasulullahi ilaykum jamia was his claim. Yet how many political governments of the world submitted to his political authority at all, or even to his religious authority? So practically, for him to be the supreme master in religion is evident from this verse, Ya ayyuhan nasu inni rasulullahi ilaykum jamia. But for him to claim that he is also the political master of the whole world is absolutely wrong, is given a lie by the early history of Islam and the later history of Islam as well. Asad Masood, what is it? Asad Odeh?
Yes, Musa Asad.
Musa Asad Odeh should realize that when Ahmad sallallahu alaihi wasallam began to spread the message of Islam, it was spread to the whole world. And during his lifetime, we know that some of his companions reached China and converted a large number of Chinese in some areas at that moment. Similarly, Islam was spread before the political conquest of Iran, to India, and to many other countries of the world. What was the position of the Muslims who converted to Islam in those political states? Were they ceased to pay homage to the law of the land? And did they create their own separate kingdom within a non-Islamic political system? Did they ever do so? Never. They paid homage, full homage, to the law of the land, to which they belonged, and they never created a small section of Islamic government within that state. They obeyed it, obeyed the order of the day, obeyed the orders of the monarchs of the day, if it was monarchy. The only thing which guided their path was this: Ati'u Allaha wa ati'u Rasula wa ulil amri minkum fa in tanaza'tum fi shay'in farudduhu ila Allahi wa Rasulih. The only guiding principle was this, that you must obey God and His Prophet, and also him who holds the political authority in his hand. But when you disagree with the political ruler in some matters which are outside his domain, this is understood, then you present the matter for the final decision to God and His Prophet. What is implied in this verse was fully understood by the Muslims of all periods and practiced as such. Even today, those ulama who hold beliefs to the contrary of what I'm saying, when they themselves are in foreign lands, foreign to their own previous country, they obey the law. Now, this is seen everywhere alike. The most advanced fundamentalists who preach a different story to the world, when they put their foot on foreign lands, they immediately begin to obey that. If they refuse to obey a non-Muslim leader under the impression that Islam does not require them to obey any non-Muslim leader, political leader, they will be ousted from the country or imprisoned in the country. So, this is why all the so-called mullahs who speak against Ahmadiyyah and their views and faith on these matters, they tell the government, we are perfectly humble servants of your law, and we do not violate your laws. Correct? But when it comes to, if ever it comes to, the interference by a political government in the fundamental Muslim beliefs and practices, then the Muslims everywhere in the world would much rather go to prison or externed from the country, but will not prefer to obey the law of the land against Islam. Now, the local laws everywhere are not Islamic, they're secular. Still they are practiced by the Muslims living in these countries. They know full well that they're not Islamic laws. They practice them because they think that by practicing them, they do not contradict with the expected behaviors of a Muslim in fundamentals. For instance, they cannot marry twice here in England, so they will respect the law. If not, they should be ready to go to jail. Instead of having two wives, they will have none. You see, they do it quietly, because the law does not bother what they do, how many concubines they keep, how many remarried wives they have. The law does not bother. So they also do not bother with the law openly. But if the law had told them not to say the 5-time prayers, not to observe the fast, will they also behave in the like manner? No, certainly not. Hope not. I do hope they will not behave in that manner. Then they will say, all right, throw us into the jails or turn us out of the country. But the fundamentals of Islam will not be sacrificed on the altar of your laws. فَإِذَا تَنَازَعْتُمْ فِي شَيْءٍ فَرُدُّوهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. When you disagree in fundamentals, then instead of obeying the worldly rulers, you're obliged to return these matters for final decision to God and to the Quran and to the Holy Prophet. Correct? But how can they contact God, communicate with God themselves immediately in such matters? They do not even believe in revelation. And how can they speak to the Holy Prophet of Islam with a responsive answer from him nowadays? Both these things seem impossible, except at the time when these verses were revealed. But these verses are eternal. They did not cease to function after the demise of Ahmadi Muslim. And during his time as well, when the Muslims disagreed on any matters, not between the state and the person, in any matters regarding religion, they did not follow the order of this verse. They did not go first to Allah and inquire directly from Him what we should do about it. And then afterwards they did not seek the help of Hazrat Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to resolve these matters. So what does it mean to go to Allah and to the Prophet? The only sensible meaning of this is that the Quran represents Allah and the traditions of the Holy Prophet represent the Rasul. As such, these verses are eternalized. No confusion whatsoever. This exactly was the practice of the companions of the Holy Prophet. If a verse had been revealed in the Quran, they acted upon it and they did not bother Ahmadi sallallahu alaihi wasallam if the verse was evident and clear. This was going to Allah. And if they failed to agree in the meaning of any verse, then they always referred the matter to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he made the final decision. The matter ended there and then. After the demise, the same practice should have continued. And it continues as far as we, the Ahmadi Muslim Jamaat, are concerned. Whenever there is a disagreement between any state where Ahmadis live and them in matters of fundamentals of Islam, they always refer the matter to the Quran and also to the Sunnah of Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is exactly the row which you observe nowadays between the Ahmadis and the government authorities in Pakistan. We are perfectly loyal subject. That is, by we I mean the Pakistani Ahmadis. They are perfectly loyal subjects of Pakistan, much more so than any other so-called Pakistani mullahs or public are concerned. They are most certainly loyal to the law of the land, to the defense of the country, and to all the noble traditions of the people of Pakistan or government of Pakistan. But when it comes to religion, if Pakistan dares to interfere with the religious obligations of the Ahmadis in their country, they defy. They are ready to accept any punishment, but they will not follow those practices which are imposed upon them and which are non-Muslim. When it comes to the order that you should not say prayers like Muslims do, there is not a single Ahmadi in Pakistan who would abide by this order. Hundreds have been imprisoned just for the act of praying to Allah like the Muslims do. But they do not care. There is not one exception to the rule. When it comes not to believe in the totality of the Quran and not to read the Quran, they absolutely defy this order. Every Ahmadi house has Quran, and every Ahmadi, genuine Ahmadi, recites the Holy Quran daily. Particularly after my emphasis on this, I have reports that at least 100,000 Ahmadis, that is the minimum number, say the 5 times prayers and recite the Quran daily as the Quran requires them to recite it daily. Occasionally they are caught in the act of this crime and they are punished for this crime. And very often the law, the prosecution charges them with 298C, 295C, which means that by acting according to the injunctions of the Quran and the Holy Prophet, you have committed a crime which makes you liable to be condemned to death. This is the madness which has gone into the head of the rulers of Pakistan. And yet they say, go ahead, do whatever you like. From this practice we will not deviate. أطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول وأولي الأمر منكم فإذا تنازعتم في شيء فردوه إلى الله ورسوله. We practice Islam.
فإن تنازعتم فردوه إلى الله ورسوله.
यही पढ़ो. فإن تنازعتم فردوه إلى الله ورسوله. This is the practice everywhere. So Mr. Asad Ode should understand that this is what we believe to be the true Islam, the nature of true Islam. Islam and politics are not wedded together. Politics is a separate compartment altogether. In every non-Muslim state, the Muslims can practice the teaching of the Quran and the teaching of the Sunnah. And as long as those states where Muslims live do not interfere with Islam, that is to say, interfere with the fundamentals of Islam, they are left alone altogether, and no quarrel is picked between the Muslims of the land and such governments. See? Now, having understood this, how can he conceive a situation where the Khalifa of the Jamaat rules all the states of the world? cannot. If he rules only a so-called Muslim state, what right does he possess to interfere with the politics of other countries? Such countries who happen to have a majority of Ahmadis still are an independent political entity. And as such, a caliph has no right to interfere with the politics. He can only deliver the same message to the Ahmadis there. Ati'u Allah wa ati'u Rasulah wa ulil amri minkum. فَإِذَا تَنَازَعْتُمْ فِي شَيْءٍ فَرُدُّوهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. Obey the authority of the land, whether that authority is exercised by Ahmadi heads of states or non-Ahmadi heads of states. It's immaterial. It does not make any difference. So the order to a so-called Ahmadi country will remain the same order which is given by the Holy Quran. But right, a caliph has to make a new order, to deliver a completely new order. So he has to exercise his authority exactly in accordance with the Quran. And that authority will not change by the changing situation in different countries. That authority is as unchangeable as the Quran is. You understand? So if any country happens to become an Ahmadi, a Muslim country, the Quranic injunction will not change. Directly, the representative of Islam, that is Khalifa in this case, will have no authority to interfere with their politics. The message he will repeat again and again will be the same message which every Muslim rightful authority has been repeating from the time of Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, which I have read to you again and again. Understand? So as such, no conflict can ever arise out of the changing political or religious situations of different countries. Have I answered the question fully, you think? Or a part is left thereof?
Just I want to know how comes in the first phase of Islam the Khalifa had the authority, the religious and political authority.
He did not exercise the authority everywhere, exactly the same. Because when Hazrat Abu Bakr, for instance, became a Khalifa, when did he exercise his political authority in China, India, Iran and other states? Show me one incident. Was he not the Khalifa of all these countries? So there the authority is separated. A country which happened to accept the political authority of a Khalifa within its confined borders, only there such authority was exercised. If a country, for instance, decides that the Khalifa of the Jamaat Ahmadiyya, and the decision will be that of the country itself, should be requested to hold the political authority of the country as well in his own hands, then this matter can be decided by that Khalifa according to the wisdom of that period, according to the dictates of wisdom. If I were to offer this authority, I would refuse to accept it. See? But to offer this possibility of ruling a country politically as well is the prerogative of the people of the country, not that of the Khalifa himself. Got it? Now with that, I think you will take about 20 minutes or thereabout.
Yes.
Or less or more.
Maybe less. If some time left, then we'll send.
Okay. So I go and do my work.